I met Angelo Bruno once personally. I was telling this story earlier. I had to serve some papers on him. When you intercept someone in a wiretap or a microphone, the law says that eventually you have to notify them that they were overheard. So I was given the assignment to go to Bruno's house and serve him with the papers that he had been overheard. I and another agent went to the front door, knocked on the door. Mrs. Bruno came to the door, and when I identified myself, she went ballistic. Angelo Bruno called from upstairs. "Who is it?" And I said, "It's the FBI." She stopped her rant. He said, "Are you here to arrest me?" I said, "No, I'm just here to serve some papers on you." He said, "Well, come on up." So I went upstairs, and he was standing in the bathroom in his shorts with shaving cream all over his face. And he said, "What is it?" And I told him, and I handed him the papers, and he said, I have to apologize for my wife. She takes this stuff seriously." And that's the only time I ever met Angelo Bruno.
Angelo Bruno headed the Philadelphia Atlantic City Mafia in what is considered its most tranquil years. During his near two-decade reign as boss, bookmakers were permitted to operate independently of the Bruno organization, provided everyone involved respected everyone else's boundaries and territories. Angelo Bruno's larger rackets would always end up taking some of the independents' action. Whenever a bookie needed to edge off some heavy play, he would collaborate with a larger operator, usually one controlled by Bruno. Bruno also lent money to local bookies, either to help them settle up with customers after a particularly bad week, or because they themselves were heavy gamblers. Bruno would usually charge a point a week, maybe two. In time, when a bookie was unable to meet his weekly payment, he would offer Angelo Bruno a piece of his business. In that way, without any strong-arm tactics or the use of violence, Bruno would further expand his influence and control over the Philadelphia rackets. It was a time-honored system that enabled the Bruno organization to flourish. Even members of the organization were provided wide latitude by the mob boss. Harry the Hunchback Riccabini developed a mob within the mob, under the broad umbrella of the Bruno crime family. Riccabini, a Bruno contemporary, was from the old school. He was a mobster who preferred to make money rather than make noise. Like Bruno, he became a very wealthy man. Second in command to Bruno was his underboss, Philip Testa. Phil Testa was born to Sicilian immigrants in Philadelphia and lived in South Philly with his family in his teenage years. In South Philadelphia, he met and befriended future mob boss Angelo Bruno. Phil Testa would eventually court and marry Alfia Arcidiacono. In 1954, The Testas had a daughter, Maria. 2 years later, in 1956, at the age of 32, Philip Testa became a father to his only son, Salvatore Testa. Philip Testa raised his son according to strong Roman Catholic traditions. He himself was quite different from the usual mobsters. He did not have mistresses and was loyal to his wife. A burly 56-year-old gruff man, Phil Testa lacked Bruno's polish, but he had the same understanding and respect for the traditions of the organization. He was described as a dour-looking man with a pockmarked face, well-built, with brown hair. He was reported to have dark, emotionless eyes that gave off the appearance of a great white shark with a bulbous nose and a scowl that made reporters and photographers back away from him. In 1970, Philip Testa would become underboss after the death of Angelo Bruno's previous underboss, Ignazio Denaro. From the late 1970s until his murder in March of '81, Philip ran his operation from a back office of a restaurant located at 5 Bank Street in Philadelphia. Between 1979 and 1980, the name was changed to Virgilio's. Testa named the restaurant after Virgil Mariutti, who was a close friend of Salvi. Here, Phil Testa allegedly oversaw his criminal empire, extortion, loan sharking, and narcotics. Mariutti managed the restaurant during part of the time that Testa owned it. Law enforcement surveillances of Virgilio's between March of 1980 and March of 1981 captured high-ranking members and numerous associates entering and leaving the bar. Virgilio's was a hangout for members of the Philadelphia crime family, including Angelo Bruno. Frank Monti, who was good friends with Philip Testa, and Nicky Scarfo, worked there as a bartender. Phil Testa and Angelo Bruno were cut from the same fabric in their approach to Cosa Nostra and its traditions. They both lived and died by the gun, so to speak. It was old-fashioned greed and ambition that killed Angelo Bruno on that rainy Friday night in March of 1980. In 1979, Frank Funzi Thierry, then head of New York's Genovese crime family, tried to seize control of a lucrative Hudson County bookmaking operation from Caponigro, who controlled the gambling racket from his base in nearby Newark. Thierry took the dispute to the Mafia Commission. Bruno defended Caponigro's proprietary rights, and the commission ruled in his favor. Thierry accepted the decision. Or did he? A year later, he saw a way to undo what the commission had done. Caponigro had been quietly lining up support in Philadelphia for a palace coup.
March 21st, 1980, a rainy night. His car's parked right in front of his house. Someone armed with a shotgun walks up, shoots him in the back of the head. And that's kind of the beginning of the end of the Philadelphia mob. Bruno had always maintained that he didn't want his organization involved in drug dealing. And so guys were dealing drugs on the side, on the sneak. And one of the guys who was dealing a lot of drugs was his consigliere, Antonio Tony Bananas Caponigro, based in Newark. Caponigro was making a lot of money in gambling, loan sharking, but he also was dealing, I think it was heroin. He was upset with Bruno. Bruno wasn't taking advantage of the different opportunities, and he thought the drug ban was nonsense. In the late 1970s, Rosario and Giuseppe Gambino, cousins of Carlo Gambino, were part of a big Sicilian mafia heroin operation. Later became known as the Pizza Connection. Rosario and Giuseppe open up a nightclub in Cherry Hill, New Jersey called Valentino's. And they come and pay tribute to Bruno. They're in his jurisdiction, so to speak, and they're going to operate here. What's more, he had them here for dinner on Easter Sunday. And the supposition within the organization was, if they were giving Bruno money, that was drug money. And there was a certain hypocrisy involved in Bruno saying, we can't deal drugs, but he's letting these two drug dealers set up and make a lot of money in his territory. Now, Caponigro was upset about this, and Caponigro, in addition to being the consigliere of the crime family, is the head of the North Jersey faction of the Philadelphia mob. They always had a branch in Newark, New Jersey. And Tony Bananas had a $2 million bookmaking operation up there. And several years before this, Caponigro was involved in a dispute with the Genovese crime family. The Genoveses had their hands in a lot of different things. Gambling, loan sharking, junketeering, all of those kind of things. They wanted to get their hooks into the bookmaking operation. There was a big sit down in front of the Mafia Commission, and the Genoveses were not allowed to have a piece of this bookmaking operation. Now we fast forward to 1980, 7 or 8 years later. Caponigro wants to eliminate Bruno. He talks to some Genovese crime family members in Newark, and they give him the nod. They say, the commission's okay, do what you got to do. He takes this as an okay, an authorization to murder Bruno. And on the night of March 21st, Bruno is in fact killed.
March 21st, 1980, a stormy evening in South Philadelphia. Angelo Bruno pulls up outside his house. At the wheel is his trusted driver, John Stanfa, a Sicilian-born mafia associate. Bruno lives in the heart of the city's Italian-American community. Here he feels safe. As a mafia don, he rules these streets, but not for long.
The shooting was gangland style. Angelo Bruno was shot in the back of the head at point-blank range.
FBI agent Jim Marr is called in to investigate the crime scene.
Bruno was still seated in the passenger side of the car, his mouth open, his head back. From looking at the body, first it appeared as though he'd been shot behind the right ear.
Bruno's death sent shockwaves through Philadelphia's close-knit Italian community. Many in South Philly respected him. They called him the Gentle Don because of his preference for conciliation over violence.
Perfect gentleman, perfect neighbor. Always had a hello, always spoke kind. He was such a well-liked man that didn't realize that something like this could happen.
Bruno's murder causes panic inside the closed world of the Philadelphia Mafia.
One night, I'm in this private club in South Philly. I used to go there a lot. A guy by the name of Paco owned it. I used to borrow money from Paco all the fucking time. I owed him. I owed him 30 fucking grand. I used to give him 600 a week. Juice, this Paco. So one Friday night, I'm sitting at the bar, talking to him. Now, Paco's a neutral guy. He's a bookmaker. A loan shark. The phone rings. So, Paco goes and he answers it. I'm sitting there, drinking a vodka martini, straight up. He comes back and says to me, "You're never gonna believe this. Angelo Bruno? He just got whacked." This was sometime around 10 that Paco got the call. It was a fucking shock. Didn't see this one coming. I mean, there was always some kind of static where Angelo was concerned, but Christ, not to this fucking degree. Fucking dead? I tried to reach Mickey, to find out what the fuck is going on. Long John came by, but before he even got out of his car, he stationed an armed bodyguard at both ends of the fucking street. Yeah, Martirano was not a MAID member, but was a high-ranking associate. His stature, however, was a product of his link to Bruno. He was worried to death. Everybody was paranoid. The whole fucking outfit after Angie got killed. Phil Testa knew he was a prime suspect in the killing of Angelo Bruno, and he knew such a suspicion, if not quickly removed, could result in his own death. He had a pretty good idea who had plotted Bruno's murder, and in the weeks following the shooting, he laid it out for the leaders of the two most powerful mob families in New York. At least one of those men, Frank Funzi Thierry, knew Testa was telling the truth. About 3 weeks after the Bruno murder, Caramandi was in Coos Little Italy, the same restaurant where Bruno dined the night of his death. The restaurant was owned by Frank Sindone and Tommy Del Giorno, although the owner of record was Del Giorno's wife, Marianne. It was a popular spot for members of the Bruno family, and had in fact been a mob-connected business for years. I go in there with a girl, and I'm about to fucking have dinner. Who walks in? Tony, with Sindone and Blackie. Tony sits down. He has dinner with me and the girl. We're talking, but he ain't talking business. He's talking to the girl. Thinks he's a fucking ladies' man, this fuck Tony. After dinner, they moved to the bar, where Caponigro saw a barmaid he had been trying, without success, to take to bed. Tony has got it bad for this fucking barmaid. He's trying to fucking pick her up. Holy shit. He starts drinking, coming on to her. He used to drink Remy Martin. Straight. Watch this motherfucker. Holy shit. Yo, Toad. Holy shit. Oh man, Tony. Caponigro interrupted his play for the barmaid long enough to tell Caramandi he had a meeting the next day in New York. So Tony says to me, I want you to listen to me. When I get back Monday, everything is going to be under control. You're going to get down. On Thursday, April 17th, 1980, Tony Caponigro and his brother-in-law, Alfred Salerno, traveled to Manhattan, where Salerno, no relation to Fat Tony, owned a jewelry store. There on the corner of 47th Street in Midtown, they were picked up by members of the Genovese crime family, now headed by Vincent the Chin Gigante. Caponigro thought he was going to a meeting where he would be appointed boss of the Philadelphia Mafia.
Law enforcement officials today were still trying to determine the motives for the gangland-style slaying of two Essex County mob figures. The bullet-riddled bodies of 67-year-old Antonio Tony Bananas Caponigro of Short Hills and Alfred Salerno, 64, of Verona, were both found April 18th in the South Bronx, but authorities only identified their bodies yesterday after fingerprint analysis. Caponigro was thought to be the head of gambling and loan sharking operations along the North Jersey waterfront. His body was found in a trunk of a stolen car, riddled with bullets and stab wounds and littered with $20 bills. Salerno, his hands and feet tied behind him, was shot several times. His body was found in another section of the South Bronx.
So what you got was Phil Testa as boss, Scarfo as consigliere, and Pete Casella as underboss. Petey, he was in jail with that fucking Valachi guy. Before he got out, he was in jail with that fucking Valachi guy. Cocksucker. He did 20 years in Atlanta on a federal drug charge. 20 fucking years. This motherfucker made a lot of friends. So he took Phil Testa to New York and told his story. That's when they caught Tony in a lie. Some kind of fucking lie. And I think the shooter in the Bruno murder was Tony's brother-in-law, Alfred. From what I hear, now Phil's the boss, and other Caponigro loyalists, they scramble to fall in line behind the new regime. The new power. As soon as Tony got killed, this Felix Bocchino went right in and surrendered to Phil Testa. He told him what he had coming in, going out, etc., etc. Later, he tells Pat the cat, I'm telling you, Pat, this is a whole new fucking ballgame with these guys. Then they grab Chicky Ciangalini. They bring him to a garage. Scarfo, Phil Testa, and Pete, they put a fucking gun to this guy's head. He wanted to see if he was involved with Angelo's murder. But he claimed he wasn't, and they let him go. Nicky said he was a good man, that he was innocent of the Barracuda's tricks. He was a real Barracuda. I mean, you couldn't trust him for nothing. It was at a South Philadelphia house owned by Virgil Mariutti that Frank Monti, Salvatore Merlino, and Salvatore Testa lured Frank Sindone to his death. October 29th, 1980, Salvi arrived at the South Philadelphia house with Sindone, and although Frank Monti and Chucky Merlino were already at the house, Mariutti, who was not living at the house at the time, was not present. Upon arriving, Monti greets Sindone with a handshake. That's when Chucky Merlino emerges with a handgun. On October 30th, police were called to a South Philadelphia variety store. In an alley behind the store was the body of Frank Sindone. Frank Sindone was a local boy who, even as an adult, always resided in the South Philadelphia area. Sindone reportedly dated different women on occasion, but he never had one true love or was even interested in keeping a steady girlfriend. As he better established himself in the underworld and started making money, he bought an expensive row house at 1811 Sly Street in the Packer Park section of South Philly. Frank was known to be extremely meticulous and kept his home well maintained, reportedly having it repainted every few years. This business. It's gonna make me steal for the rest of my life. But I'll get out of there one day. You watch. I'll get the fuck out. Shortly after the murder, Chucky Merlino and Salvi Testa drove to Margate, where they met Philip Leonetti at his condominium in the Margate Towers. They went to the Easy Street Pub on Florida Avenue, between Atlantic and Pacific Avenues in Atlantic City, where Chucky and Salvi gave Scarfo and Leonetti the details of Sindone's murder. After Sindone is killed, Mickey Diamond goes to Phil Testa. He tells him that he paid Tony the 50 grand we owed from when we started up our shark operation. Mickey was trying to pull a fast one, but they already knew he didn't pay the 50 grand. And one day, me and Mickey, we go to this meeting with Felix and this Tony Ferrente. And they really laid Mick out. Who the fuck do you think you are, huh? You're gonna pay this money. Yeah, you're gonna pay. Or we're gonna break every fucking bone in your body. Mickey Diamond was scared to death. We were collecting the loan shark money, over 5 grand a week, but we couldn't do nothing with it. We had to pay the fucking 50 grand back. We'd give him 5,000, plus the 500 every week. We wasn't loaning any more money out. We couldn't. These guys, they're real good at rocking you to sleep, making you think you're straight. Everything is good when it ain't. Look how they did Sindone. Bang, bang, bang to the back of the fucking head. Poor fuck never saw it coming. I went to Virgilio's with Mickey. We had dinner and he talked to Phil Testa in private. After he returned, I say to him, "So, how do you stand, Mick?" "It's good. I'm in good standing with Philip. I got it on good authority from him. We got no problem. We're straight." But you could see the way these guys talked that there was something wrong. Only Mickey was too stupid to realize it. By the fall of 1980, Philip Testa had solidified his position as the new boss of the Philadelphia mob. Those suspected of plotting the murder of Angelo Bruno were dead. The Testas were on top of the underworld. After years toiling in Angelo Bruno's shadow, Philip was now boss, and his son Salvatore would become crowned prince of Philadelphia.